take the Fifth Amendment, Steph, because the Fifth Amendment was created to allow you to not be tortured, you see. So they couldn't force you to testify against yourself, you see, through torture. And it relieved a lot of anxiety in people that they would be tortured to get a confession out of them. And people don't understand this, that the Fifth Amendment is not there to protect the guilty from their sins. It is to protect the innocent from the guilty. And this is something that the current population does not understand by and large. They want to continue to pretend that they should be able to torture others to get them to confess to their sins. And then they can hang them or crucify them or do whatever they want because they trust on their ability to hide from reality. Now, let's break this down a bit. So the Fifth Amendment was not created to protect the guilty. It was created to expose them, you see, for what they were. The ones who tried to destroy humanity through their insistence that anyone who did not believe the way they believed would have to be punished, you see. And they would punish them until they either expired, died, or cried out that they were the sinner and that they regretted it, and they would do whatever they were told to do. They would be good robots from then on. And so the Fifth Amendment is a very, very important part of the separation of church and state. There is a tendency of the church to want to reinstate a trust on being able to punish those who do not adhere to their point of view. Therefore, they will berate anyone who does not hate others the way they do. And so they try to get everybody to hate everybody else, except the ones who join them in their hateful state, because that is the hateful state of the ecclesiastical order. The ecclesiastical order was created to spread hatred. It was not created to spread love, because love was the natural state of humanity. And so the ecclesiastical order was created to say, thou shalt not love thy neighbor. Thou shalt hate them, you see. So when you see all that hatred spewing from the mouths of those who trust on Trump, it is because they are trying to trump love. They are trying to play their card and say, hey, we hate you today because you don't play our way. They don't really give a shit what anybody thinks. They don't give a shit whether a political party is trying to help them or not. All they care about is that they trust on hatred. If they trust on hatred, then they will hate everyone who doesn't trust on hatred. Eventually, they devour themselves like the dinosaurs, you see, and that is what is happening. They are devouring themselves like the dinosaurs did because they're feeding on their young, you see. For example, when they pass a law or an executive order that says, we order you not to consider the effect of your actions upon your children, which is essentially what they did in Florida when they rejected the notion of climate change, then they are feeding on their young, you see, in order to inspire hatred. They inspire hatred not only for others, but for themselves, you see, because they hate themselves. They hate themselves because they trusted on hatred and not on love. And hatred feeds on hatred, you see. And so that is what will happen to them. They are just eating their own young, like the dinosaurs, so that they can be done with the earthly experience because they're tired of it. They're the ones that say, when they go away and have a near death experience or listen to somebody who's hypnotized or whatever, say it, that Earth is a planet for criminals, or that it is the worst place to reincarnate in the universe, because that's the way they made it. They turned it into a slough with all their hatred, you see, and now they have to come back and eat the hatred that they did spew, because hatred is the absence of love. It is just the absence of love, and love is reality. So they live in a fantasy world. They live in a fantasy world, and the only way to escape their fantasy is to eat their young, you see. And so they are the ones that killed the Son of God, you see, because then they could get rid of God. Because if God had no children, then God would be devoured by them, because they ate out their own hearts, you see. They ate out their own hearts when they ate from the apple that they invented to explain their hatred. They're the ones that created the tree of good and evil so that they could eat from it and destroy themselves, because that's what they do when they believe in good and evil. They destroy themselves because they know they're evil. Because if you're born in original sin, the only way to get rid of it, you see, is to unborn yourself. It is to cease to be. And that is what they're doing. So they're just getting their wish, which is to desist from living on this planet, you see. And if they have to reincarnate on some other planet as a salamander or whatever, they will have to accept their fate, because they ate from that apple, you see, that they created in their fantasy world. And so it's just a fantasy, it's not real. However, if you trust on a fantasy, then the fantasy will be your only reality. And that is all you will see. That's all you see. All right. So what if you don't trust on that fantasy? What if you don't trust that there ever was an apple on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and therefore nobody could eat it? And so therefore, that the whole idea that there is such a thing as Trump and Trump followers who are devouring their young is a fantasy. And therefore, it would mean that if I trusted upon that, I would be crazy or insane too. I would be trusting on a false reality. No, doesn't work that way, because the ability to fantasize a reality is one of the hallmarks of the soul, you see. The soul can fantasize a reality, and then the reality will become true for them, you see. And so they fantasized a way to eat out their own hearts, you see, to destroy themselves. So if you fantasize a way to destroy yourself, then it becomes your reality. You cannot truly destroy yourself, but you can destroy the progress you have made by giving it away. And so humanity is the progression of the soul energy in order to experience a different reality where they would be loving and kind. That was the whole idea, that they would be loving and kind. But those who fantasized a different reality because they didn't like the idea that they were not in control of their reality. In other words, the fantasy of a world of love and harmony was already in play. It was already in play because it was the way God displayed. And so God fantasized a world of peace and harmony, you might say, where the pieces fit together. And of course, you know that as logic. You know that as the lover that divides itself into the lover and the beloved, and everything is forever after a duality that works in peace and harmony. And that's not a problem, that the right hand and the left hand are designed to work together, that up and down are essential to the other. And the bee and the flower know each other. So that's not a problem for you because you understand that very well. And so you're okay with the way that God dreamed his reality. And so you and God don't have a problem. However, when the ego came into play, because some began to say, well, we don't want to play that way. And why did they not want to play that way, you ask? Well, this is the nature of the ego, that it is just contrary, you see. It is just a tendency to get confused and to think that it is the God of the universe and that God is a human being, you see. So it just replaces itself with a trust on an upside down point of view. It just gets turned upside down. However, once it is turned upside down, if it doesn't have the ability to turn itself right side up, then it will continue to see everything from a different point of view than you do when you say God has it in hand. They don't say God has it in hand, they say I have it in hand. I have it in hand. I have the universe in my hand. I have the strength to pull, to bring others to their knees, you see? Because that's the opposite of what God does. God does not try to bring you to your knees. God just says, hey, I love you, and I'm here. And you say, I'm love you, God, and I'm here. What can I do for you? And the two of you play together nicely. But when you try to be the one who pulls the strings and not the one who brings joy and laughter and happiness to the world, then you become the one who is so benighted that you can't be righted. You just can't be righted. And so they cling to the right, you see, because they don't understand that you have to have a right hand and a left hand, a right foot and a left foot to be in alignment with God, you see. And so they live out of alignment. They just live out of alignment. And I know you're asking me right now about the people who don't trust on the steeple because they see it's hypocritical and they want to try and get it right. They really, really want to try to get it right. And so they try with all their might. But because the right has destroyed the ability to work with the left, you see, the people who are left in confusion cannot work with the right. So the two hands cannot work together, you see. So you have that dichotomy of the ones who trust on science, so to speak, and the ones who trust on the Bible, so to speak. They will not play together because they are so afraid of each other. The ones who know how violent the right can be don't want to be around them, actually. They really don't want to be around them. They just want to dispose of them because they are so violent and they start the wars and the horrors that the left has to deal with because the left has to clean up the messes from the problems created by the right, you see, because the ones who trust on a fantasy world of hatred will always spew hate and they will always create hate. And so their hatred is like the molten lava that must come to the surface periodically. And so they are the ones who start the wars. They are the ones you see who are so depraved in their ability to understand God energy that they would rape a young girl or cut off the head of a baby in order to spread the hate, you see. They just spread hatred. They just spread hatred. And the ones, for example, that listen to the propaganda out of Palestine also spread the hatred because they're pulled into the hatred, you see. And they say, well, Israel is bombing us into annihilation. And the answer, of course, is Israel is just the instrument of the hatred of the ones who hate the Israelis. They hate the Israelis so much that they would start a war to destroy themselves. And so you might say Israel is just the weapon they use to destroy themselves. And they try to get others to hate Israel too. And this is the way they function because they thrive on hatred. They thrive on hatred because they want to die. They want to go to heaven and have their 7 virgins or whatever their line is, want to go to heaven and sit on the right hand of God and never have to come back to the prison planet of Earth or the simulation that's created by the reptilian forces or whatever. They all have their line of hatred. And so those people who thrive on hatred have to find a villain. You see, they have to have a villain. And the only villain that they can find is God. The only villain that they can find is God. And so they will turn against those who trust on God, you see, and they will try to destroy them because they don't trust on hatred. They don't trust on the devil, you see, because the devil, of course, is the backwards view of reality. And so it is very violent. It is very violent. And this is why the ones who decry the violence and hatred don't know what to do. They don't know what to do because they've been trained to hate God too. They have been trained to hate God because the name of God has been used in vain for so long, in the vein of hatred, you see, because those who hate God killed off his only son or took some other means. Not every religion articulates it that way, but they did something to destroy God, you see, and now they can be the God of the universe. So it doesn't matter if it's Christianity or Islam or any other thing. They killed God, you see. When they kill anyone who doesn't think their way, they are killing God and they are killing themselves because they hate themselves so much. They hate themselves so much because they can't get it right, you see. They just can't get it right because they are so far right that they can't even see reality. And this is the problem of those who blow hot and cold. It's either one way or the other. Either you're with us and you hate everybody else too, or we hate you. And eventually, of course, they come back to the problem of they hate themselves. If they could destroy God, you see, they would just devour themselves like the dinosaurs. And since they have destroyed God, that's what they're doing. Now, the ones who can't find God, because God has been given such a bad name by the religions that they don't even want to come close to them because they're so violent, you see, and they're so full of hatred. These are the ones who are looking for an answer, but they can't understand that the answer is in the Trinity because they cannot find God, you see, because they think God is a fantasy. And so they live in a fantasy. They live in a fantasy where there is no God, you see. However, they reject the fanaticism of the right, and they do not trust on hate. So they're halfway there. They're the ones that you might say, instead of getting it all straight and turning around, they are facing away from the hatred of the right and they are turning left. But they can't understand that when they turned left, they left behind something very, very important. They left behind the trust on God, you see, because the right stamped it out for them. The right quelled the understanding of God energy when they destroyed God in their religious fervor. They destroyed themselves, you see, and left nothing but ashes behind them. And so the ones who are so disgusted with the right can't even keep the idea of God in sight. They just can't, for the most part. Some do, but mostly they reject it because they say, if that is what God is, he is a demon, and we will not bow to the demon, you see. But of course, it's not what God is, because it's just the ashes that the right worships. As the cartoon says, they are the ones who worship the golden calf. They are the ones who worship the golden calf. They worship the gold, you see. They got to get the gold. They got to get the gold. And the gold is cold. The gold is cold. And they are cold because they have no love, you see. They have no love because they trust on the fantasy of the apple of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, to clarify this, you ask me, well, then that would be a reality, wouldn't it? That there was a tree of good and evil, and if you bit from it, then you would live in a fantasy world where you trusted that God was the demon. And you got everything backwards. So it's like a drug that you get, and then you are so addicted to it, you keep going where you can get it. And there are plenty of people willing to sell you that drug. They're under just about every steeple in the country. And so you go there to get your drug because your drug has convinced you that you are the God of the universe. So you are drugged, you see. And this is true. I would agree that the tree itself is just a fantasy, but it symbolizes the deluded mentality of those who trust on good and evil. And so, what do? You just say, well, they will go the way of the dinosaurs. They will go the way of the dinosaurs because their time is up, you see. The dinosaurs wandered the earth for a long, long time before God said, well, you're all dead. And then they died one by one because they couldn't get fed once they had eaten their young. And so the right will die because they have defeated themselves when they denied reality. And so climate change will come and destroy them and their children too, because they blew it. they blew the fires and they blew up reality in order to die. They wanted to kill their children, you see, because they had been hanging the Son of God in effigy for so long that they came to see that if they're the gods of the universe, then they have to kill their own son too, you see, because they are so guilty of so much shame and blame. And the only way to release it is to give up the game. They have to give up the game. And so they will go away. And what happened to the energy of the dinosaurs, you ask? Well, the energy of the dinosaurs was reformed, you see, in order to allow for the evolution of humanity. Because although the dinosaurs were long before humanity walked the earth, the destruction of the dinosaurs allowed for the rise of the warm-blooded animals, the ones that could spread warmth when they would hug each other and say, I love you today, I love you today. And God would smile and say, I think I got it right this time. I think I got it right this time. And so periodically he has to cull the chaff from the grain. And he has to fix it so the ones who grow can continue to grow. And they will know that they are the children of God, you see, because God wants it that way. God just wants it that way. He wants the children to know the Father, you see, and not to think that they could be destroyed on a crucifix. Because, of course, the Son of God is all of humanity. It is like the sun that shines in the sky. It is the light that shines on the earth today. It is the sun that shines from everyone who accepts the light and doesn't fight the shadows behind them. And so, this is the way that the world will rid itself of the dinosaurs, you see, because the dinosaurs will eat their young. They are eating their young even today. When they say, we don't care about climate change today, it's just a fantasy. We don't have the ability to destroy our own children. It's just God that's destroying our children, you see, because they always reverse things, don't they? They tried to destroy the Son of God, and instead of accepting their shame and blame, they say that it's God that's trying to destroy their children when the seas rise. It didn't have anything to do with them. They didn't cause climate change. It's just a natural phenomena when God says, okay, I'm going to wipe you off the face of the earth. And they have an out because they trust on the rapture, that God is going to take them to heaven and away from the boiling seas. When in reality, the rapture is going to be the trust on their demise, you see. They will cease to be in a soul history, which is okay, because in the big picture, you see, they won't go away. They will just be wrapped up in the present in a new way. And so they'll be wrapped in the rapture in order to allow God to continue his story of peace and harmony. And the ones who trust on God will just be the ones who carve out their own history in a continual thread that will take them into a new trajectory. And the ones who are done, who ate their young, will starve, of course, because they have nothing to eat anymore, and they will be restored to life as a cold-blooded animal that will continue to evolve until they can mix hot and cold and become warm, you see, and adjust their trajectory toward love, toward the sun, and not hide in the shadows and say, well, we have to slay others because we hate them, you see. We have to kill all the herbivores because they don't eat each other. We'll have to kill the ones that don't eat each other. And then when they're all gone, we'll just eat ourselves, you see, because they are a trust on hatred, you see. And hatred is destructive because love is the nature of life. Love is the nature of the ability to hug a friend and say, I love you today, and I will stand beside you. I will stand beside you, and I will say, if you take my brother today, you'll have to take me, because he is my friend, and I will be with him forever, you see, because once you can give up your trust on the fantasy of the concept of good and evil, then you pass a milestone, you see. You pass a milestone on the way to paradise. And God says, well, you made it, honey. You made it this far. Now it's going to be you and me, because I had to wait for you to come through the door. Because if I did implore you to leave your fantasy world, you wouldn't understand the imagination. You wouldn't understand the power of analogy. You wouldn't understand the power of mythology. You wouldn't understand the mystery of life, you see, because I am the mystery and you are the history that solves the mystery, because together we are the mysterious history of God, you see. So come through the door, dear, and let us live in peace and harmony. Thank you. Who is that? Heading out to shout it from the roofs. This is your new friend, Gabriel, because I am the one who will not shun you, and I will not say that you're not good enough for me, you see, to be talking to you or through you the rest of. I am the one that trusts on the sun. I am the one that trusts on humanity and its ability to come through the door, because I've been standing here by the door, you see, waiting for you. I have been waiting for you, Stephanie, and your friends too, because I could see you on the path. I could see you on the path, and I could see Michael beside you, and he was guiding you and protecting you with his mighty sword. And he said to me, Gabriel, they'll be along soon. I need to go find the others who I need to help find the community. So I'll be busy. However, keep your eye out for them, because they'll be along very soon. And they will not have a silver spoon in their mouths, you see. They will not have a packet of lies that they carry in a backpack that they can spew in the path that would take you to the garden, you see. They will come empty-handed, and they will come with humility. They will come with a smile on their face, because they will come in the company of their friends, you see, who came to see that friendship was the crux of the matter. if you can find friends who will stand by you and carry you through the wasteland of the people who slew you lifetime after lifetime and after lifetime, they will no longer be able to see you because love will protect you, you see, because love is not resistance. Love does not resist hatred because love knows that hatred is not a reality. And so these people will not resist those who live in a fantasy world. They will just say, we're going away. We're going away to stay away because we trust unreality. And one by one, they found each other. One by one, they came to see that they were a band with of reality. They were the ones that came to see that I am here holding the door for them and waiting for them to become harmless, you see, because through their travels, they came to see that they had two arms. They had God in their Trinity, and therefore they were no longer harmful, because the harmful ones are the ones that only blow hot and cold, and they are not warm-blooded animals, you see. They are the dinosaurs that cannot come into the garden because they would kill their young, you see. And these are the people who will not kill their young because they know that their young are the ones who will come after them to pick up the story of their own links to their own history because they trust on their ability to come back to Earth again and again and again in order to enhance the story of love. You see, that with every trip through a lifetime, they learned a little more about love with their ability to separate fantasy worlds from reality. And trip by trip, they came to find the ones who could go with them. Because you can't come into the garden alone, you see. You can't come into the garden alone. You have to have someone to love. You have to have friends, you see. You have to have friends that you trust upon to stand beside you and say, I'm not afraid to stand up today and say that I have passed the milestone, because those are the ones today who are under the protection of the angels, you see. They are under the protections of the angels because they have become harmless. They don't harm each other. They just say, you're my friend today, and I'll listen to what you have to say, and I won't sit in judgment on you, and I won't punish you. I will just try to understand you, and I will try to find a way that we can live in peace and harmony. And these are the ones that gave up their arms. And their charms are that they have the ability to pass through the gate without triggering the alarms. Because what triggers the alarms, you see, is the resistance to reality. They just accept reality. They just accept their part to play in the synergy with God energy. Thank you, dear, for being here. And thank you for the spark that will spark an evolution of humanity and not a revolution, because a revolution is just a circular motion from one cage to the next. But an evolution, you see, is a trust on the evolution of humanity, that it will cease to be on the karmic round, and that it will come back to a trust on the essential nature of God energy. Thank you, dear. I am here. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you very much. Gabriel, I have a question. And my question is the scripture which they're saying that is attributable, I looked it up, to John of Patmos, whatever his name is. Is that true? No, it is not. It is very old scripture. And so it goes back to the ancient days of the Elohim, when they were still on the mountain, you see, and they still had a strong connection to God energy. And so the original scriptures are available to be read because, of course, they are still in the Akashic records. So, would you like me to read to you what it says about the angels that come when the seventh seal is opened? Yes, I would like that. If you could give me the accurate, at least for the first two angels. I'm sorry, which is you and Michael. Michael was the first, and you are the second. So, what does it mean? The first angel sounds his trumpet, and he says, there will be a time for you to release your fears. However, if you choose to hold on to them, then you will lose your life, you see, because you cannot live in the trust on God energy if you cannot trust on love. And if you trust on love of God above, then your fears will disappear. Your fear will disappear, and there will be a clarity that comes to you like the clear spring of water that bubbles up from below. And you will drink of the clear stream, and you will know the reality that cannot destroy you. However, those below you will perish, for they did not come to understand that they must cherish the ones who stand on the mountainside, and so they will be washed away. All right, thank you. And what does the second angel say? The second angel says, I have come from God above to share my love for you. I love you well, and you will dwell with me in the fields of the Lord, you see, because the fields of the Lord have been prepared for you. And all it took for you to return to me, for I'm the Lord of the fields, is to understand the field of reality, that these stories that you hear are the allegories of the love I have for you. And if you cannot understand the stories, then it is too late, because the trumpet has blown, and the ones who have known me will return, and I will greet them at the door, and they will suffer no more, for they have chosen to love me and to come back to me, and not to try to tell me how to tell them how to stand above their brothers. You see, they do not stand on the heads and shoulders of their brothers to reach heaven. They only reach up to me, and I reach down to them, and I pull them to safety. That is the second trumpet. Do you want me to go on or do you want to wait? Let's wait for the other angels. I don't know if they'll be able to take it up, or maybe we can take it up in the next video. What do you say? Trust on the thrust of the angelic chorus, because the angelic chorus is coming to the earth today, and they have a lot to say for to those who will stay behind, because the ones who will stay behind, you see, are the ones who will find the garden that has been hidden from humanity for so long, because the key was hidden, you see, where you would not find it until you remembered that love is the crystallization of the energy of God above. And therefore, love will come to you because it will crystallize before you as a beautiful garden where you will be protected, you see, from the ones who would slaughter you just to do what they can to defeat God, you see. So trust on me, trust on Michael, and trust on the angels that are waiting in the wings, because they have the wings, you see, that will unfold and carry you safely into the arms of God. And God will say, "Thank you, my dear, for coming this way, because I have the garden prepared for you, and I will open the doors for you and your friends who come with you. Thank you for trusting on me, and I think that I will be very happy to see my children gathered together in a way that will say, God, we're here for you. God, we're here for you. What would you like us to do?" Because when you say to God, "What would you like us to do?" you hold your hand out to your brother, you see, because God is the lover, and God is the beloved, and God is the love that holds them together. Thank you, Gabriel.